humble. The grace of being humble. That's what we want to talk about. Give me just a little bit more here. I'm going to get the grace of being humble. The grace of being humble. You know, there is a grace that is found when we practice, when we exhibit, when we walk in a life that is filled with humility, you know. And a lot of times, you know, we experience the grace of God in the midst of our humbleness. And to be humble, let's look at the definition of that. To be humble. Humble is a definition that we can use. There are many definitions, but for this text and lesson, we're going to use this one. To make or become love. To be fully dependent on the Lord while dismissing reliance upon self. I'll read it again. To make humble. To make or become love. To be fully dependent on the Lord while dismissing reliance upon self. You know, in other words, you know, to be humble is a person who really is dependent on God for everything. And one of the ways that we can become humble, remain humble, is when we begin to, watch this now, compare ourselves to God. See, the average practice or the average believer is to compare ourselves to each other. And sometimes what that does is that promotes pride. But when we compare ourselves to God, we see just how marvelous, just how wonderful, just how great. I mean, it's just not enough words to describe him, just how awesome he is, just how big he is, and then we also realize just how insignificant we are, how little we are compared to the God that we serve. And that's why whenever you see in the biblical text that people are in the presence of God, they shrink down, they kneel down, they bow down. Why? Because the spirit of humility comes over them when they compare who they are in the awesome presence of this awesome God that we have. So in order for us to be humble, one of the things that we need to do is begin to compare ourselves to the God that we serve instead of comparing ourselves to each other. When we compare ourselves to the other, that opens up doors for pride, you know, who she think he is, who he think he is, or they're trying to be like this and trying to be like that. I don't have time to compare myself to anybody else but God. And when I look at him and I look at myself in light of him, what does it do? It causes me to shrink. It causes me to bow down. It causes me, you know, it causes me to get low. Why? Because I am humble by the presence of God. And here in our text this morning, Peter talks about humility, and that we need to be humble believers or humble Christians. And we need to kind of really understand that there is grace found in humility, you know. Now, so one may say to me, well, thank you, brother. One may say, that's perfect. One may say to me, how do I know if I am humble? Well, here we go. When you arrive at a place in life where you depend on God as your source for everything and in every situation, you know that you are now have arrived at a place of humility. Now, just when we arrive there, don't mean we stay there, or we need to stay there, but we got to work at remaining in there. And I'll say it again. You achieve humility or state of humility or a state of humbleness when you arrive at a place in life, watch this now, when you depend on God as your source for everything and in every situation. You depend on God for everything. And every situation is God. And everything is God. You know, is God breathed? Is God ordained? Is God walked out? Is God thought of? When your life becomes in a pattern where you just depend on God for everything. I ain't mean something. See, the problem is we tend to, I'll get some kind of echo here. We tend to depend on God, watch this now, after we fail. But the humble person depends on God so that he doesn't fail. He depends on God. It's great. He depends on God for everything and in everything. God is not his second choice. God is always his first choice. God is not his backup plan. That's why some things we say, we got to love what we're saying. Like God is my co-pilot. Well, then you're in trouble because you still got the wheel. And that's why your life is about to crash right now. God cannot be your co-pilot. He doesn't take orders from you. No, God is your pilot. Now you need to step back and let the pilot steer the plane, steer the bus, steer the car where it needs to go. And that's why a lot of us are in trouble today, because God is still our co-pilot. And you know what? The co-pilot is the person that takes command from the pilot. The co-pilot is the one that takes over when the pilot gets tired. I'm gonna go get you some coffee. You go ahead and fly this plane. And literally that's how we treat God. Lord, I got this for right now. You just sit back. When I need you, I'm gonna call on you. And we make decisions for our lives based on the fact that God is not our source. I'm gonna make my decision, and guess what? When I mess up the decision, now God becomes my source. And that is not humility. Humility is when you arrive at a place in your life when you depend on God for everything and in every situation. And when we begin to live like that and learn that, just recently I was praying to God. Well, not recently, but for a while now, really. I've been praying for God. I said, Lord, there has to be more that you got for me to do. And I said, Lord, broaden my horizons, take my work outside of just Kensington, and allow me to be an instrument of greater use for you. And I'm gonna tell you, so God heard me and he answered me. But check this out. So one of my friends, him, Dr. Gross, he on Facebook, he emailed all of us and said, a church in Africa was in trouble. The flood came in and flooded them out, and they didn't have any, which he don't ever ask for donations from anybody. He says, but I'm gonna ask for donations for those who are gonna give. And so I did give because the Lord laid on my heart to give. And and after I did, and people always watch, And so somebody contacted me, this young man, and he says it was very generous of what you've done. And I said, okay. Now how long will it be before he asked me for something? You know what I mean? So I said, okay, right, and then, days went by, weeks went by, and, and he contacted me, this young man, I don't even know. And, he began to, ask me about who I was and everything and share stuff with me. And I said, okay, it's going to be a while before he asks for some money. I know it's coming. I'm just going to play along with this. And, I talked to him and sure enough, just like clockwork. He says, well, I have this, kids that I'm helping in Africa, and I appreciate it if you can help me, blah, 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 blah. I said, I knew it, and so, I didn't respond, but I began to pray. I said, Lord, I know what I asked you for, and if this is your answer, make it plain, make it clear, and just understand. I said, Lord, everything I have is yours. Everything that, all my finances belong to you. All the silver and gold belongs to you. Lord, you know the hearts of men all over the world. I don't know. I am not God. God, I need you to tell me that this is real. And I ask that you would reveal to me the heart of this young man. And so, sure enough, I asked God, and sure enough, I got the answer that this is the real deal. So I says, okay. So, I contacted this young man back, and we began to correspond back and forth. And I'm now entered into a relationship where he has now become my son in the ministry, and I am supporting the work that is in Africa. And it is just amazing, again, when God is your source, when you depend on God before you make a move. You know what I mean? There's all kind of scammers out there, but I depended on God before I made the move. When you arrive at a place in humility to say, Lord, I don't know. Lord, I don't know which way to go. Instead of sitting there thinking about it, and meditating on stuff that you know nothing about. It's above your pay grade. You cannot read the hearts of men. You don't know the plight of people all over the world. So what do? You humble yourself under the mighty hand of God and allow him to lead you and guide you to as to what he wants you to do. And when you arrive at a place in your life where you depend on God as your source for everything, then you have arrived at a state of humility. Being humble means being in submission to God and his word. Look at verse 5 here in 1 Peter. Likewise, you younger people, submit yourselves to your elders. Yes, all of you be submissive to one another. So Peter here, he employs them that part of humility is being submissive. He tells the young people, being submissive to your elders. When I worked on the rescue squad, there were so many, we always get calls at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to go to these women's shelters. And, I talked, to several young ladies that take their kids to the hospital all the time at night. And there are so many times that I spoke to them, and they were articulate, intelligent, young black women, and I talked to them on several occasions. I asked them, some of them, not all of them, why are you here? What happened in your life that made you arrive living in this place at this time? And most of them had eyes with their parents because of a young man. The mother and father said, that I'm not going to allow him in our house. And if he can't come, well, I'm going to take my babies and go, And again, so the Bible warns young people here to be submissive. Likewise, younger people, be submissive to your elders, And we need to teach our children how to be submissive, And not only that, then he says, be submissive to one another. Talking about us. Now understand this. Being submissive do not mean that you bow down to other people.